This is R2D Tech, and today we're going to have a look at some of the cool new features of macOS Big Sur, so stay tuned. Okay, so macOS has always been about providing a very clean aesthetic for people who don't necessarily want all of the complications of Windows, but also for those pro developers who do want all of those extra features. With this in mind, Apple have added lots of cool new features to the new macOS Big Sur, which I think you guys are really going to like. The first of which is the new control center. So in the top menu bar, they've actually added a control center which is very similar to that of the iPad or iPhone. So you have sliders for brightness and volume, but you also have access to things like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, AirDrop, and AirPlay. In addition to this, you can actually drag any of these onto the main menu bar, so they're much easier to access. And one thing which comes to mind straight away is that this is very similar to the iOS experience, and it almost seems like it would be easier just to touch and drag some of those sliders rather than use a trackpad or mouse. So I'm wondering whether Apple are actually transitioning the Mac to a touchscreen product, or if maybe someday in the future they're actually going to bring full Mac OS to the iPad. But all of those are just speculations, and I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. The next feature which Apple added is actually a new and improved notification center. So if you click on the time in the top right corner of your Mac, you'll get access to this, and it not only provides grouped notifications like you get on the iPhone and iPad, which I think is really neat, but also you get a whole new host of widgets which are much more customizable now, so you can control the size, how much information you want them to show, and this is actually open to developers, so there'll be a lot more widgets than you could previously access, and you'll be able to download any of these. Moving on, the Messages app has received a long-awaited refresh, and now you can do things like search through messages and people, but you can also pin them, which I think is pretty neat. And in addition to this, you also have access to memojis, so you can create and edit them straight on your Mac now, which is pretty cool, I guess. And you also have access to some cool effects like birthday effects and other things like that, which, yes, is a bit of a gimmick, but I still think it's pretty cool. Probably the coolest thing though from this new refresh is you have access to that new iOS 14 style implementation of groups. So you can have proper groups like you would on a WhatsApp with friends. And my favorite feature is that you can only have notifications turned on for when you get added, which I think will save a lot of unnecessary notifications. And of course, you can always turn this off. And if you want to see all the messages, then you can just go onto the app. The next app to get quite a major refresh is Apple Maps, and now you have features like Look Around, which is basically like Google Street View but slightly smoother. Now, I'm not saying anyone copied anyone, but Apple definitely copied Google here. In addition to this, you can now do ETA with your friends on the actual map, so you can see where they are if you want to meet up with them, and that's pretty neat as well. But my very favorite feature of the new refresh, which Google actually doesn't have on their maps, and I don't really know why, is that you can input your electric vehicle type, and it will actually plan out your route so you don't have to worry about running out of charge. And I think that's really neat, actually. Next up is Safari, and Apple actually made quite a big deal about this in their WWDC keynote. They claim that it's now 50% faster than Google Chrome. I'm not exactly sure if that's true, but we'll just take their word on it, I guess. The main update though was privacy settings. So when you're on a website now, you can actually see exactly what information that website is tracking. And in 2020, I think that's pretty neat. Another cool implementation is now Safari extensions. So you have access to a lot more extensions on the App Store actually, and you can add all of those to Safari. And the neat thing is, in terms of privacy, you can actually specify which websites you're going to allow those extensions to be active on, and how long they can be active for, and exactly when they can be active. So in terms of privacy, that's definitely pretty neat. The last feature though is actually native translation. So if you're on a foreign website, it will now pretty quickly translate into your native tongue so you can read it, which is really useful. I know Google have been doing this for quite a few years, so technically Apple are copying this, so Okay, we're nearly there, just a couple more features to get through. So next up is the Mail app, which has received a long-awaited update because I'm not going to lie, the previous version was kind of bad. So on this new one, you have a nice new side panel and top panel, but also the app is much more color-coded, so it's a lot more friendly to look at, but also navigate. The last feature is probably something that most people don't know about, which is Mac Catalyst, and this allows developers to make their iPad apps run on the Mac. Now, previously, it basically did just that, so you could just change your iPad app to run on the Mac exactly like it ran on the iPad. But now they've kind of made it more Mac friendly, like they've acknowledged that the Mac is a more pro device. So now when you change the iPad app to run on the Mac, you can have a lot more features like multiple windows and multitasking and things like that. And you might be interested to know that that's exactly how Apple put their Maps and messaging app from iOS onto the Mac. Now, although this is a very nice feature now with the Intel-based Macs, I'm guessing when they switch the ARM-based processors on the Macs within the next 2 years, this step won't really be necessary anymore, since both devices will be running on the same framework. Definitely though, if you haven't seen that video which I made on ARM-based Macs, then go to the channel and check that out because it's actually really interesting. So those are the main features of the new macOS Big Sur. I think it's actually pretty great and I can't wait to check it out when the public beta comes out. I'll probably make a follow-up video then. Now, if you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up, and if you really liked it and you want to see more content like this in the future, then definitely hit that subscribe button and notification bell below.